program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org. Welcome to another edition of Maui Causes. Hi, I'm Sam Small. Eternal thanks to our crew, Todd Swan and Sleepy John in the control room, and to Kaku for providing this conduit for us to be able to present information and ideas to this community that is not spun through the corporate control of the media, local media like the Maui News, that seems to have a persistent perspective of supporting the status quo. This show is dedicated to being a positive disruption of the status quo. That is a necessary ingredient in a free democracy, because if a particular power structure is in place for too long, the business interests will always dominate that situation. Over time, politicians who start out working for their communities end up being influenced by those big money interests, and that's why, term limits exist. That's why we have those kinds of things. Here on our county council, we have this really bad practice of allowing council members to run for 5 sessions, 10 years, and then they term out. But then they take 1 term off and they can come back. That's not in your best interest. Those are the kind of structural changes that need to be changed here in Maui County. There's a lot of structural changes that need to be changed. And some of even your favorite council members may not be addressing these issues. Great apologies that it's inconvenient to discuss some of this stuff in public for these candidates. But if we can't talk about these issues now during a campaign season, when can we? When else do we have the public interest? When else do we have people's ears except during the election time? I can tell you, once the election's over, people don't want to hear about this stuff. So it is a necessary process to be talking about these things. And how the county responds to emergencies is a big issue going on right now, because we've had a bunch of emergencies. With hurricane flooding, with wildfires, brush fires, there's been great opportunity to get a look at where the holes are, get a look at what's missing from our community. And to discuss some of these things with us here today, we have with us Keeaumoku Kapu.
Hi, aloha.
Yep, thank you for joining us. If you would tell the people who you are and your family history.
Yeah, my name is Keeaumoku Kapu. I'm from Kaula Valley. Kaula Valley is simply easy to describe. We live on Kuleana lands that was awarded to our families from the time of the kingdom.
It's over on the west side.
Yeah, it's on the west side. So Lahaina, in Lahaina, Mauka of Lahaina, the L, right side of the L, that's Kaula Valley. And that was the valley that previously got engulfed by the large fire that just occurred about 2 weeks ago. And
how many homes were lost over there?
11 homes were lost in the valley. My position as I serve is the Ahamoku o Maui CEO for Maui County. And also I'm the cultural coordinator for Na Aikane o Maui Cultural Center in Lahaina, which actually was the disaster hub for when the fire occurred. A lot of donations that came from the general community to help the families that lost literally everything.
Everything, yeah, sure.
So 11 homes that got engulfed, and it went up fast. I mean, to a point as to where when you started talking about the response from the county as well as the state, yeah, we need to kind of look into those kind of things and talk about it and have a discussion on how more we can protect the interests of not just the public sector or the private sector, but as well as the Kuleana landowners too.
So the Kuleana landowners fall into then a unique bracket. They're sort of in a unique situation. They're not part of this. They're not fully in the system, but there is some expectation that they receive protections and services. Mm-hmm. So how do we balance? Some of that is mutually exclusive.
Well, first of all, Kuleana lands was awarded to the heirs from the time of the Great Mahela of 1843. The county as well as the state just made an exemption in 2010 to exempt Kuleana landowners from paying tax.
Right.
So we're exempt from paying taxes. We don't have public utilities hooked up in our properties. That doesn't exclude us.
So you're off the grid. These are homes that are off the grid. You don't have county services.
Yeah, we don't have no county services, no county roads, no water. It comes from a private sector. And you know, our properties have always been under the heirship of our families from the time of the monarchy.
Right.
So
is not paying a tax, is that a good thing?
Most definitely, because taxes have risen for Kuleanas throughout the years when all of a sudden a neighbor moves in just adjacent to the property and wants to put in a swimming pool. Mm-hmm. You know, our taxes used to go up before.
Right.
So thanks to, you know, our old council member, Joanne Johnson, back in 2010, when she was a council member, she requested that Kuleana shouldn't pay any taxes because of the unique status that we're put in, yeah.
Well, Joanne Johnson really had a wonderful track record of doing, you know, positive changes here in Maui County to, in a lot of cases, right the wrongs that had been created. She turns up in a lot of the research that I've done on the deferral agreements, these 3-lot or less deferral agreements, a secret giveaway that the county manufactured back in 1974. Perhaps it didn't start, you know, with the intention. Like many things around here, it starts with good intentions, but then once the lawyers and the land developers get their teeth into it, they turn it into something that gets exploited. And she shut down these 3-lot, you know, deferral agreements as part of her tenure.
And always tried to push a moratorium on everything, on all development, to make sure that the infrastructure was set in place before we start looking at how these developments are going to be adequate for certain areas. You know, agricultural lands is a big thing for us on the west side.
Sure. And a lot of the changes that Joanne Johnson initiated, you know, this is the problem that I have. You know, I've tried like hell to work with Ellie Cochran and her entire staff to get in front of these issues, because they inherited all of that intellectual property from Joanne Johnson. Joanne Johnson, you know, brought Ellie Cochran in and endorsed her and said, this is my replacement, and handed to her legislation that would have solved a lot of the issues. Joanne Johnson did a tremendous amount of work. And Ms. Cochran has turned her back on all of that. She has not pursued any of those issues over these past 6-7 years that she's been in office. They asked me to give a presentation to her infrastructure committee. I don't know why they asked me to give the presentation, because essentially the presentation lays out the fact that from 2012 to 2018, Ellie Cochran did nothing on any of these infrastructure issues. So many of the loopholes that exist that Joanne Johnson identified could have been closed in 2012. But nothing has happened. And that's, you know, that's why I apologize at the beginning of the show, because I know it's inconvenient to a campaign, you know, to bring these issues forth. But now is the time to be talking about it, because people are paying attention.
Yeah, especially the public sector, especially after a lot of things that's been happening on the west side. Not only the fire, but right immediately after, a week after, the other hurricane that came in literally almost wiped out Honoka'a Valley too.
Right, and the flooding, this is one of the, I can't get an answer. The flooding at that bridge, took out several different homes. That project, that entire area, phase 4 of Lower Honolulu Road, was removed. Over millions of dollars were spent of the county's money, and state and federal STIP funds, roadway funds, were spent. But as a capital improvement project, phase 4 of Lower Road has been removed from the county's capital improvement list with no explanation. And we've asked repeatedly, what's the plan? And we can't get an answer. So, it's rising to the state level at this point, asking the state. It's like, hey, state and federal STIP funds were allocated and spent.
Yeah.
And this project is dead now. Does the state care? Were those funds appropriated inappropriately? Were they spent inappropriately? Who's minding the store? As far as the public is concerned, it's supposed to be the council member. If the council member doesn't do their job, what do the citizens do?
That's why I always brought up the issue about not enough oversight, especially at the county level, the public trust. Then on the private sector too, we've been dealing with a private company that has been dysfunctional to even the careship of their resources of 5,000 acres of land. And it's the second time this fire actually occurred in our valley. And, when you start asking for, simple things like, okay, who is responsible for this and who is responsible for that? It always boils down to, these properties need to be abated. There's abatements that needed to happen to make sure that most definitely they protect the private sector, because the private sector's homes are all insured. The county's responsibility to protect the public sector, most definitely. They're all abated. What about us that live in the middle?
Right. So by abatements, you mean things like green belts and fire breaks that are installed.
Assurances to make sure that we're protected as well.
Right. So if a fire happens, like this is. Oluwalu is a good example of that. Oluwalu that area has burned several times now, and families have had to flee for their lives. Even homeowners of some of the big fancy homes that were built have had to flee for their lives because the wildfire had no brakes. The developer never installed they never met the permit conditions on that property. On that development, they never installed the fire breaks or green belts that are supposed to be actively maintained to be a barrier, that there should be no fuel for a fire in a certain section so that the fire can't spread. And yet we can't get the Department of Public Works to enforce their own permit.
Yeah.
There's no oversight.
Yeah.
There's no accountability. And that's where, as citizens, we rely on our county council members. That's the job that Joanne Johnson did so well, and other council members have not. Oluwalu is it's an ongoing problem. They were brought back 10 years later the developer was brought back to answer some of those infrastructure issues, and they still haven't met their permit conditions.
Even on a water line that was set up in an area, the kind of trying to get to some consensus within the fire department on them doing their investigation. Nothing actually came forward, but the only operational line within that area came from the hydro plant from my place to the hot zone that we discussed with the fire department was within that area. So for me, it automatically shows and says that, the land company that is responsible of those areas, the intake, the water intake, the reservoir area where the fire was, tells me that the fire actually started from there. So, but it's not definite yet. The fire department is still looking into it.
They're investigating the source of that fire?
They're investigating the source. At one of the public meetings, I asked a representative from MECO what would be the protocol if all of a sudden the winds exceeded a certain amount where the lines are whipping, and what is the protocol for MECO to shut down? And
the power,
literally
so
they said there is none.
Right. So if the lines do fall because of the wind, the power should be off. They shouldn't spark a fire.
Yeah. So those kind of things draw serious questions for me and my families on, we're in the process of rebuilding. Well, what's the guarantee we're going to be protected later? So now I'm reaching out and trying to find simple questions on how we can protect ourselves, because apparently the state dropped the ball.
How so? What was lacking in the state's response?
Specifically for the oversight on extinguishers, fire hydrants, which they said that they got on call from West Maui Land Company in the morning that one of the hydrants blew.
Oh.
Kind of interesting. And, all these things that was kind of a continual excuse as to why they couldn't address the issue of the fire at that specific time. Nothing was functional. So is the state responsible to make sure that the county is doing some kind of oversight? Because what was told to me in the meeting was the state really dropped the ball. So how did the state drop the ball? The state dropped the ball by not making sure that the county was making sure that the public utility companies, which is owned by the private landowners, is doing whatever they need to do to abate their properties to make sure that there's adequate infrastructure to address 80-something family members that live off the grid in those areas. Mm-hmm. Like for me, I look at the private sector. Why does the county always got to go to the private sector when they're trying to address some kind of issue or get to the fire? Because what was told to me the next day that the fire department was sent to Keeaumoku, which is 20 minutes away from the fire. Instead of going to, not Keeaumoku, but Kaiheleku, but they should have went to Keeaumoku, which they would have been at the fire 20 minutes earlier, instead of being there 20 minutes late.
So they went,
It's
a remote location we're talking about where this fire was.
Well, it's right off of Keeaumoku. It's not really remote.
Oh.
But if you know the lay of the land and you call the right people who know and can inform the fire department what road they're supposed to take,
right.
I think they would have been there sooner. When the fire started about 12 o'clock at night, the families was burned out by 1.
Right.
So 1 hour
made the difference for those people.
Yeah, 1 hour made the difference. Nobody showed up, and those houses were obliterated within 1 hour because of the factor of the winds was going like 70, maybe 80 miles per hour.
Right.
So
which are really difficult conditions to manage a fire.
Oh yeah. So, I'm not trying to throw the blame at anybody, but I think there needs to be more oversight from the state, from the county, from the private sector to make sure they're doing their due diligence to protect everybody in the public, private, as well as the Kuleana sector, because they bought into it. So if they bought into 5,000 acres with a warranty title deed, and all of a sudden you get families living in this area, we're never included in any of the progress that is done within those sectors. We're like left out.
Because you don't pay taxes.
Yeah. But still,
so how do you balance?
They use our resources, like our water resources, to create their electricity, to pump their hydro, to get their wells pumping, so they can provide potable water for 1,500 homes, on the private sector.
They source their water through these lands.
Yeah.
So there is some ongoing relationship between the Kuleana landholders.
Yeah, but every time when they have
county.
a development, like say maybe 201H or 201G project, to us it's like, okay, when they start chopping up these lands and doing subdivision and all this, where are we in there?
Right.
We're never in there. When they do the master plan, the Kuleanas is never a part of the master plan. So how can we collaborate to make sure that all the agencies and the private sector, which they really don't want to deal with us because
it's complicated.
Well, it's title issues. Mm-hmm. they claim they own an X amount of lands, and for the Kuleanas, they're saying, well, if you do own it, I would like to see a title. Not a warranty title, but a title. Because it all boils down to the resources that they're grabbing from this area, like the water. You know, that water on prior cases in Kauaula was meant for taro cultivation first.
Uh-huh.
You know, so you have the Palakiko family, which is my ohana that live on the bottom. Then you have me up on the top, still doing taro cultivation, but every time a project is done, our supply is minimal.
Right.
So they never include us in this.
And
So
that was the plan that was laid out for water usage
Yeah.
at the time of statehood.
yeah.
There was a program that was set up to look at the traditional uses,
Yeah.
who was using what water, and they tried to codify
Yeah,
and give.
they actually did. It was a Supreme Court ruling in 1897 to make sure that Kuleana landowners had first precedence to the water.
Right.
So when you do subdivision and you say, okay, this is where we get the water from, they don't look at our issue, yeah, and how it's going to impact us when they start saying they're going to provide for 240 more homes on potable and non-potable system that comes in the valley. It really minimizes our use, even when it comes to a point where we get fires.
Right.
Where's our use? Once the pipes get burned out, we have no water resources in that area. So these are the kind of things that are trying to run through the county, run through the state, having them understand that, you know, we need some kind of apparatus, you know, some kind of help from the state as well as the county in providing us apparatus, because if the county really don't understand Kuleana, then give us the tools so we can take care of ourselves. Well, it's simple.
That, you know, that is one solution. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, either that or, you know, provide more bigger pipes for us so there's areas we can hook up hydrants and, you know, literally tend for ourselves. You know, when the mayor made the comment saying that, look, if you want to talk about Kuleana lands and you guys claim to be exempt, then bottom line, whatever happened to you guys, you asked for it. And that's kind of pissed off everybody in the room, saying that, hey, wait a minute, guys.
He has a tendency to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, at the most wrongest time. You know, especially for like the Kuleana family living in Kauaula. Now all of a sudden the landowners want to come in, West Maui Land Company, Makila Land Company, and start surveying their lands because the thing is all burned out. But they want to survey the lands around the Kuleanas that live there, which is really offensive to my family, saying, wow, check out these guys. Now the place is all burned out. Now they want to come in? And it's the second time they've done that. And the first time wasn't so bad because nobody's houses got burned. But
Right.
now they want to come in again and survey the land again because there's no homes. You know, they're just mad.
Is you know, is that a prelude to a challenge on the rights to the Kuleana land?
Yeah.
You know what?
It's a threat.
Unfortunately, what I see is that every time there is a natural disaster and some kind of disruption, the powers that be rush in and try and manipulate the situation to their advantage.
Yeah.
That's what took place at Iao Valley. That
Yeah.
was that 100-year storm with removing those rocks so quickly to go in and divert that stream flow, you know, using heavy machinery to change what nature did, to reestablish that water supply back to that water company.
Yeah.
They did that very quickly, very intentionally. And that's the kind of, you know, it seems ongoing manipulations that they're fast to respond to protect their entitlements and even expand their entitlements when there's a disaster. But serving the community, no, that's not what happens.
No, I think the community, there's one thing interesting about Lahaina, that the community came out with the Lahaina Strong, that just felt that, hey, we need to do something now, immediately. And, oh man, this thing went crazy. I mean, not just the donations that came in, but the monetary donations of food, water,
truckloads,
clothes,
yeah,
truckloads just came to our center and dropped off. There are a couple of locations. Our building was the hub. I mean, our building is 55,000 square feet of, it's a center that we hold meetings, and that turned into the disaster center for 2 weeks.
Right.
But the good thing about it is...
You're right there in Lahaina.
Yeah, the good thing about it is it created a good camaraderie, not just of the local community, but the non-Hawaiian community that came out and supported. So,
well, and it's a good indicator. It's a good barometer of that there are people in the community who understand that this situation isn't right, that what's going on here is not right, and that these people and this community deserves to be supported more than they are receiving through the county, and the public stepped forward through a nonprofit, this Lahaina Strong, to be able to give relief and aid to the people that were damaged. Mm-hmm. How can people support?
For us, Na Aikane, Maui just got a couple of skits donated from Tri-Isle, mm-hmm. of water, some paper products, some food. So they donated 2 skits yesterday to Na Aikane, Maui, mm-hmm. Our organization now. Okay. So we just set everything aside, and if the families need any more rations and stuff like that, we're there for them.
How can people reach out and support that?
We're at the Na Aikane, Maui Culture Center, 562A Front Street. And you can come that way, either that or you can call me. My number is 298-5639, Keeaumoku.
There's more to our show in just a moment. This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org.
Our push has always been, right now, the families are looking at their lots. They're hoping to replace all the 9 houses that was in one area of a kuleana, then the second area, which is the Palakikos, they lost 2. So there's also homes that were lost in the private sector, which they got allocated some monies from Lahaina Strong. I think there were monies that was allocated to a whole bunch of people in the public sector. 2 or 3 homes got lost in the public sector. They got monies from Lahaina Strong too to help them. Mm-hmm. Those homes were, I would assume, had insurance. Some the private sector, but like for the kuleanas, we're just going to have to rebuild from scratch. So we're still looking for donations. The pipes have been crazy, like hooking up a lot of the water lines that we needed. Palakikos needed 5,000 feet. The Dyson needed 3,000 feet. So a lot of the general community came out and they bought pipes and they brought it down to our center. So a lot of the pipes was from like Hui on the Wai'eha. They supplied pipes for kuleanas up in the valley. From the Western hotels, they brought in some pipes. You had even people that lived in Launiopoko. They went to a pipe company, and one guy purchased 3,000 foot of pipe and donated it.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
And they donated it, the kindness of their heart, and they came to our center, and we've made a lot of new friends, and our center is now in the spotlight. I don't think that's a good thing to say sometimes, because we get people coming in every different times of the day, but hoping to help, that's the main thing. And I'm really glad that we live in a community that is really compassionate and cares for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main thing. I'm kind of a little bit upset as to, I'm really hoping that this fire wasn't, and Honolulu isn't used as a trump card to say that, certain individuals that have been involved in here for campaign reasons. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that hope
politicizing.
Yeah, politicizing this whole event, trying to get votes. For me, I'm really appalled to that. I'm running too for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. When my family came first, the area that got impacted is right below me.
Right.
My home almost got burnt. If it wasn't for my sons going up in the morning and literally fighting fire to save our homes, I wouldn't have a home myself.
Right.
Yeah, so the media has just been crazy. But to a point where it's been good for everybody to know that, okay, now that everything is burned out, here we are, people, the special class of citizens that live right in the middle of the private and the public sector. Now all of a sudden the beacons are on us. And how do we alleviate when people start asking questions about, our livelihood, how long we've been living there, what's the history of this place? So you get a lot of people asking more questions.
Well, questions. Well, that's you're calling, in some ways, you're calling for additional oversight. But additional oversight comes with a unique cost to an independent community, because suddenly there's people in there asking questions where nobody was asking questions before. And there's, that's definitely going to be a negotiated, there's a lot of balancing to be done that way. Because your community is not going to be able to have more oversight and greater assistance from the county without greater requirements made of them, that they're going to have to standardize some things, and they're going to have to, play by some new rules that they haven't had to. So that's not going to be an easy thing. Yeah. And you're prepared, you think, as a community to negotiate those things?
I think whatever way we go, it's going to be historical.
Yeah.
Because it's Kuleana lands that have been basically out of the box, that has been not literally required by the county or the state agencies because of the lack of jurisdiction they had. Right. So now me over there standing right in the middle trying to juggle something to make sure that we're more well protected. We still don't have public utilities, but how can the private as well as the state and the county provide adequate necessities for us, knowing that we are off the grid, and not be flagged? There's other developments that have occurred in Maui County as test pilots to be building homes under the radar. Say Department of Hawaiian Homelands in Keeaumoku Kapu. How are those homes being permitted? Do we stay under the 16 by 20 required mini home to make sure that we still fall under exemption? And also looking at the county's planning development on indigenous architecture design guidelines. Those are all put together for like traditional holidays and stuff like that. But how can we get the language to kind of look at the language and saying that, okay, the house in itself versus the bathroom, which is separate from the house, and to minimize that, to create to stay within the exemption clause of a Kuleana because we're not provided with public utilities. Right. That kind of stuff. I'm juggling with those things, trying to make sure now that, everything is definitely going to change now. The families need to rebuild. How do we stay in compliant with the rules, that is, but being exempt at the same time, because the county exempts us and paying Kuleana land tax to zero. All those things. Need to sit down with the fire department, need to hopefully have a discussion with Miko. Hopefully have a discussion with the private landowners to make sure, hey, we need another pipe for different fire extinguisher within the Kuleana areas. What is the cost for that? What is the compromise for that? Asking the state or the county for like the simplest thing is a retired fire hose so we can use, Stuff like that. I mean, Kuleanas have an exemption, but we still want to follow the law. We still want to follow the rules, the existing rules, because we know that is the conduit that may be able to help us one day. And it always seems that the fire department is really lost when it comes to the roadways. So there was a time back in 2007, I sat with like the battalion commanders and a lot of the fire department chiefs and looked at the lay of the land and saying, you don't want to take this road, you want to take this road. Because this road will get you there 5 minutes faster.
Yeah, they kind of need to know that stuff up front.
Yeah.
Right. That's why you have drills. That's why you do preparedness, so that you know how to reach an area.
Yeah, in 2007 it's hard because you had all the D9s coming in and cutting roads so the fire department could get faster to the fire, but not realizing that they started ruining historic property sites and stuff like that. Hayals that they bulldozed. So that wasn't good oversight to incorporate to say that, this is a cultural layout, we need to protect this layout, so where is the existing roads that we can take? That kind of stuff. I'm always about creating some kind of conduit or dialogue to work with the agencies and never against the agencies. I know it's hard for them. We got one new fire chief now.
Yep, sure.
Yeah.
Brand new. Yep.
Yeah, so being anxious to sit down with him at the table on how our Kuleana families may need help in the future.
Right.
Even looking at the river conditions where the families cross to see how we can widen that to make sure that we can get emergency vehicles to go in that area if they need to. All those kind of things counts a lot. And that's a position where I am right now at this moment.
Right.
And working with whoever that can, give me some kind of insight on how our Kuleana is going to be well protected. I cannot rely on the private company. I cannot rely on, like the private company exists, the Makila Land Company, West Maui Land Company, Launio Poko, those private sectors.
Those land companies are doing what? What's their role? What is their role in those communities?
They're building homes.
They're building homes.
Yeah.
They used to be agricultural companies.
Yeah.
And now they're building homes.
Yeah. So you have now all of a sudden it's a 2-1-H where you're not required to do EIS, CIA, SMAs, all those kind of things that's supposed to be an oversight for the county to make sure that when they're doing on development, that these developments following the rules, but the 2-1-H is just another fast track.
Yeah, and this is the problem.
Yeah.
This is exactly the problem. And it's unfortunate that a fire and flooding has to happen on the public side and damage the public so that, it does create an opportunity to shed light on these manipulations and these loopholes to protect the public and also to illuminate the fact that developers get a free ride. We have here in Maui County one planning director described a culture of leniency. And after he described that culture of leniency, he was booted from his job because he took exception that, this is not serving the public interests. This is not serving the environment's long-term interests. And because he held that position, he was terminated. So the county administration is populated by land development professionals. They play a revolving door. They go back and forth. The director of public works has gone back and forth from in a position to approve projects or issue exemptions, and then leaves the office and goes to work for the companies that benefited from the exemptions that he issued when he had the job. We have proof of that kind of stuff.
One of them was through Keeaumoku Kapu LLC back in 2000, when was it? 2004. Same public director.
Yeah. And the bridge that washed out in the floods just recently, that bridge was originally part of a subdivision. Kent Smith did a 3-lot subdivision of those properties right along that bridge. And as part of their permit application, they acknowledged that they had to rebuild that bridge. David Good, working as the director of public works, became aware that the county initiated phase 4 of Lower H Road. And it was to encompass that bridge. And he actually, we have the documents, he actually redlined, crossed out the developer's responsibility, saying, well, the county is initiating a capital improvement project. The county will fix this bridge. You don't have to. That's the reverse of the way that it's supposed to be.
Indemnity.
He's, as a public works director, what he should have done is gone to the county and said, wait a minute, you're budgeting for a bridge that is a developer's responsibility. The county, the public should not be paying for this bridge. That developer should be paying for that bridge. But he left his position and went to work for Kent Smith. And then is back. And that capital improvement project, this is one of the questions that I keep asking and I can't get an answer. That capital improvement project, over $1 million was spent, and that capital improvement project was removed from the county's active list. Where did the money go? What was it spent on? And what are the plans going forward to fix that bridge? It flooded out. And 3 months ago, it's a narrow bridge. You know, there's a concrete abutment. 3 months ago, an 80-year-old gentleman drove his car into that concrete abutment and was killed. He was killed on that bridge. That bridge that the developer was supposed to fix, that the director exempted the developer from fixing, and the county has failed to fix. This is what people are living with here. And it's not right.
Well, let's not forget the roads in limbo.
The Hui roads, absolutely, it's the same kind of thing. The counties, this county's way of doing business is ass backwards every step of the way. They do everything for the developers to give things away for the developers. The rest of the developed world, the rest modern municipalities, they work with something called a fee in lieu. Rather than an exemption, if you have something that reasonably doesn't have to be performed today, then you assess the value of that, the cost of that, and you collect from the developer. Maybe they pay it out over time. It becomes part of somebody's taxes. A particular lot, a TMK, it goes on to the TMK, so it travels with the land if somebody sells. But over time, that landowner pays the county back. The work gets performed, so everybody benefits, and it gets paid out over time. This county doesn't do anything like that. Only one assessment district has ever been done over in Paia. I just ran into this whole thing up country. 16 years ago, I put my name on the upcountry water meter wait list. Suddenly, the county gives me 30 days notice to come up that I have to put close to $4,000 down to secure a water meter, so that because I'm on the list. And I'm like, well, that's great, fantastic, oh my God, I can get a second water meter. Maybe I could even subdivide. I have enough, there's enough acreage there to be able to do that. And it's within my right as a citizen to explore that I should be reasonably able to maximize what I'm allowed to do with that land. Anybody's entitled to that. It's a reasonable thing. But when I inquired in what I would have to do to be able to actually have that water meter installed, it turns out that they want me as a private citizen to pay for the roadway improvement all the way up the road to where the next source of water is. They want me to pay for 4,000 linear feet of water main upgrade. It's $1.5 million. It affects 18 other properties coming down the road. They don't have to pay for it. Only I have to pay for it. The way that the rest of the world does something like this is that they create an assessment district where everybody who's impacted by that potential improvement is presented with the opportunity to participate. They have to vote on it. 2/3 of the people that are affected by that area have to agree. So a majority of the landowners have to agree to participate, and then the county can loan the project the money. It can be assessed over time, and every landowner can pay that back to the county over time. The work gets done now. Property values go up, people's tax bases go up, so the county benefits as well, and everybody gets their needs met. There are ways to handle, using best practices, there are ways to handle situations like that, but somehow our county ignores all of that stuff. And those are the things that the kinds of structural changes that need to take place. And it's unfortunate that a community has to suffer such damage as your community has suffered to be able to bring these issues to light.
Yeah, for us it's really complicated to see how we're going to get our lives situated back together. I don't think people really realize how serious the Kuleana families have been impacted through the political rhetoric that's been going on. On how I've mentioned it many times, saying that you have the private and the public sector. What about us? That we're right in the middle. There is not enough oversight to see the provisions that we're needed in these areas, because we've been in these lands way before any of the development came in there.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, it seems like for us and our families that, it's always boils down to the private sector, these land companies that have stated their case, saying they're responsible of the resources in these areas. So if they're responsible of the resources in these areas, then they're responsible to us,
right,
the people that live there. So if it hasn't been for like a lot of the community efforts that came out, people that came to our center just wanted to help. We really found the hub within our communities of where these people are coming and why are they coming. The county should have been there first off at hand. Our representative should have been visiting the families that lost their homes.
Who's that?
And that's all the Kuleana as well.
No,
first of all, you have Ellie.
What representative are you talking about?
Yeah, first of all, you have Ellie. Another one, you have the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. The trustee that is responsible for Maui never came. There's not even monies that coming from these certain agencies to help out. Literally we had to go and call the county and start telling the county, hey, we need bins so we can help clean up our place and stuff like that. That has been the most hardest thing to do. And I don't want to throw any, negativeness inside here, but there's people that actually running for office was the ones that brought the containers for the families to help out with the families, and a lot of the roll-offs to get all the rubble out of the area. And the county tried to figure out, okay, where we're going to put it. Don't worry about that now. This is a disaster area.
Right.
Let's worry about those things later. Let's get this place cleaned up.
Well, I know Trinette Furtado, running for county council, immediately dropped everything. And immediately got involved with the Lahaina Strong.
She was the one that was sending the trucks to my building. So, she came out. Also, Alika Tai, came out and started sending the trucks our way. People who had food donations, water donations. I mean, my place was inundated. We couldn't even walk around.
Right.
Then when we got the 40-foot container to start boxing a lot of the things for the family, as soon as we loaded that up, the container went up to the area where the families lived, and And I
have to say, those two county council candidates, they didn't do it because it was Hawaiians who were impacted.
Yeah.
They did it because it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That's who they are as people. I've experienced that. It's not, they're not aiding, just a closed set of community. They're aiding everybody that needs help.
Yeah, and that was the greatness about this whole thing.
But there was, I'm still trying to find out the details of a meeting that Ellie Cochran did hold last week. It's my understanding that there was a meeting that took place at the Lahaina Public Works facility at the base yard, and only select members of the community were invited to that meeting. It's a meeting held by a council member at a public facility. What I hear was that the topic of conversation was emergency response to the infrastructure issues.
Been there.
And you weren't invited to that meeting?
No, I should have been there.
So I don't know.
Myself or my cousin Yolanda Dyson, which is the head of the property, the Kuleana lands. At least some kind of representative that would have been there if they're talking about, public response and, those kind of things. So I'm clueless. Now I want to know.
Me too. I'm trying to find out, and I can't get an answer.
Oh, interesting.
I can't get a lot of answers. There's a lot of questions that have been asked that we can't seem to get an answer to. And it's unfortunate because I've tried really hard to help solve these issues and use that as a political win. But instead, here I am exposing it as a political vulnerability. I'm not happy about that. I hate having to do that. That's just a terrible thing. But yet, that's the reality. These issues need to be discussed. I've been talking about these issues on this show now for years. I don't stop just because there's a campaign going on and some of these issues are inconvenient to a candidate. I'm sorry. That's not my fault. I don't have to stop talking about this stuff, and flooding and a fire, that brings into focus some of these deficiencies on the part of the county. I didn't control those things. A gentleman died on that bridge. It needs to be addressed. How is it going to be addressed?
Yeah.
And the matter is only getting worse. At the state level, if people are saying that the state has failed, then those questions are going to ripple out. If the county is so deficient and the state is responsible for, has oversight over the county, SMA permits are a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
The federal government, special management areas with the shoreline zone legislation the federal government requires a community to be able to have input into what goes on in shoreline areas. Because who knows best about the particulars of the shoreline than the community that lives there? And so those kinds of special management area permits require oversight.
And it triggers federal laws too.
It's federal coastal zone management laws. Now, the federal government mandates to the state to administer the program. Here in Maui County and here in Hawaii, the state subcontracts that responsibility out to the county. And so who is responsible in the county for administering the federal zone management guidelines, but the director of public works and the director of planning. They're the same individuals, land planning professionals, that are writing the exemptions to allow developers to skirt their coastal zone management responsibilities.
And that's where they're failing in the oversight on the state level as well as the county and the private sector.
Right.
There's always a partnership, like they're married to each other. That's the whole problem.
They're working the loopholes. And the loopholes exist because they created them. That's, again, what this show is all about, is to be able to expose these loopholes to you and your family so that you have an understanding and we together can force our politicians to deal with these issues. We've been squawking about this stuff for years, and it's really hard to get any traction.
Yeah, definitely.
Keeaumoku Kapu, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Thank you for all the work that you do in your community. You're all over the place over there. I mean, you are a busy guy. I know that you had a summer camp for kids. That you accepted responsibility for a youth program. There's a lot that you do out of that community center in Lahaina. Again, just tell people how they can reach out to you and support your activities.
Yeah, I'm at Lahaina, Front Street, Lahaina, 5628 Front Street. We're in the old Malu'ulu'olele Senior Center, which was the Culture Center back in 1979, and it's still the Culture Center today through Na Aikane Maui Culture Center. And I can be reached again at 298-5639. We're still accepting donations for a lot of the families. Like I said yesterday, Tri-Isle dropped off 2 skits, mahalo to Tri-Isle and the donation that they provided, and we're getting more donations coming in to help out the families on the relief efforts for the fire. At the same time, we've been helping, drop off some supplies to what's happening in Honokohau as well. So if anybody wants to provide some kind of assistance, you can reach me by that, 298-5639. Mahalo.
Thank you, and thank you all. You do have the opportunity to vote for the OHA candidates, and Keeaumoku Kapu is running in that election and is willing to extend the many hours that he contributes to the community to help pilot that program back to a place where it actually supports this community rather than exploits this community. So thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mahalo.
Thank you all. Join us again on Maui Causes. This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org.